This conference will now be recorded.
So we have started with the second competency, molecular basis of cancer. So today I'll be telling you the other half of this molecular basis of cancer. So this chart I've explained even in the yesterday's class that carcinogenesis is a multi-step process. So that means to say there is accumulation of mutation at subsequent phase stages of the cell cycle in the daughter cells. So at first generation of daughter cells, for example, there is mutation in the proto-oncogene. Second generation, there can be mutation in other proto-oncogene in addition to mutation in DNA repair gene. In the third generation, there is accumulation of there is genetic alteration in the apoptotic gene, and in the fourth generation mutation in the tumor suppressor gene. So only when the cell accumulates sufficient amount of genetic mutation, only then it turns into a malignant cell. So it's a multi-step process. So this is the hallmark of cancer, which I have explained. So whenever the mutant version of the proto-oncogene is called as oncogene, so there should not be any confusion. So alteration in the or the mutation in the genes. So there is the overexpression or activation of the growth promoting oncogene, inactivation of the tumor suppressor gene. There is alteration in the genes regulating apoptosis. There is defect in the DNA repair gene. There is reactivation of telomerase enzyme, sustained angiogenesis, so accumulation of mutation in the subsequent stages of the cell cycle. The tumor cells, they escape death from the host immune defense mechanism, and when they reach a certain size, they are capable of local invasion as well as spread to the distant site, that is metastasis. So this is a hallmark of the cancer. So today I'll be telling about few examples of the proteins which come under these subheadings. So first we'll go to the proto-oncogene. So can you just tell what are the proto-oncogenes? Seeing this picture, 5 different types of proto-oncogenes. Yes, or the proto-oncoproteins. What is this one here? Yes, what are the 5 different types? Anyone? Just unmute and you can just tell. Yes, just diagram
Growth
is there.
factor, growth
Yes,
factor
very good.
receptor,
Very good. Next, the third one.
signal transducing protein,
Very good. The fourth one, coming to the nucleus.
transcription factor,
Very good. Next, last one.
cell regulatory protein.
Very good, very good. So we'll come to the first one, the growth factors. So you have these tables in Harshamon as well as Robin. So few examples you can study under these 5 categories. So you need not remember the names of the proto-oncogene. It's very difficult. Even I also can't remember. Only one who's studying genetics, PhD genetics, only they can remember. So what you can remember is that the growth factor, which is responsible for that tumor. The example of one tumor is sufficient, and the mechanism is involved is the overexpression of that growth factor if that proto-oncogene undergoes mutation into an oncogene. Okay, so you can just tell one allele of the proto-oncogene is mutated, and the mutated version of the proto-oncogene is called as oncogene, and alteration in that oncogene, it leads to the overexpression of the proteins, which you have just told you, which you have just told in those 5 types of proteins. Okay, so either there can be overexpression, or in some cases the mechanism is point mutation, or in some cases it is translocation. So you need not remember which growth factor is overexpressed, or which growth factor is translocated, where which one is undergoes point mutation. So you just generally you just mention these three mechanisms, but predominant mechanism is the overexpression. And the proto-oncogene, only for the completion's sake I've just kept here, you need not remember that in the table. So what you have to remember is that growth factor, for example platelet derived growth factor beta, it is overexpressed in astrocytoma. So one tumor is sufficient. So this only for the completion's sake I've kept all the tumors, so because that's what is mentioned in your textbook. So whichever comes first, you can remember that. Okay, so that is the commonest thing. So always the commonest thing they usually keep in the first. So if you remember that, that's enough. Next example, transforming growth factor alpha. So cancer of the stomach, bladder, breast and melanoma. So you can remember cancer of the stomach. And fibroblastic growth factor. So you can remember hepatocellular carcinoma. As astrocytoma you have already stated here. So in astrocytoma there can be genetic alteration in two proto-oncogenes. Okay, and in thyroid carcinoma, hepatocyte is the growth factor which is overexpressed. So you can just remember one tumor under each category. Okay, and the main mechanism is overexpression. Okay, you need not remember the names of the proto-oncogenes. So that is not compulsory. Okay, next, growth factor receptors. So one I have kept in green, so that is important, because when you go to your systemic chapters in that pathogenesis section, they usually mention it. So when they mention it specifically, then only you have to remember. So here the proto-oncogene or the mutant version of that is ERB1 and ERB2 is the gene which is involved, and the receptor is the epidermal growth factor receptor. It is usually overexpressed in squamous cell carcinoma, breast and ovarian cancer. So you can just remember one point, one cancer. So here around 5 different types of growth factors are given. So if 5 are there, you can just remember 3. You can just quote 3 examples. You need not remember all the 5. So whichever is easy for you. So for example, for me, the first one is easy. The fourth one is easy. So platelet derived growth factor receptor goes by the oncogene is by the same name, platelet derived growth factor receptor oncogene. It is overexpressed in case of gliomas. Now this also is important. So when you study GIT, so c-KIT oncogene. So the growth factor receptor is receptor for stem cell factor. It undergoes point mutation, the gene, and it is seen in mesenchymal tumors of the GIT. So likewise you have the other 2. So out of 5 you can just remember 3 of them, so that is sufficient. And remembering these names, it will be definitely very difficult. So whichever I have kept shaded in green, so those are important. Next, signal transducing proteins. So I finish with growth factor and growth factor receptors. Only those 2 tables are sufficient, and few examples in each of the tables. Now, coming to signal transducing proteins. So there's one very important protein or the gene. The gene also goes by the same name. Thank God. So the RAS gene, and it encodes for the RAS protein. So this RAS protein is present in the cytoplasm, but where in the cytoplasm? It is present on the near the inner membrane, on the inner side of the plasma membrane. It receives the signal from the receptor and transmits to the nucleus, and it binds to one protein that is guanosine nucleotide protein. Now let us see the diagram. So here you have the RAS protein. So can you see where it is present? It is present in the cytoplasm, but it is attached to the plasma membrane on the inner side with the help of one more protein called as farnesyl membrane anchor protein. It's not so important to remember this. You can just tell it is attached to the inner surface of the plasma protein. So when normal function, I'm telling now, when growth factor is not getting attached to the growth factor receptor, this RAS protein is in inactive state. So what is keeping it in inactive state is the guanosin diphosphate. So this which is attached to the RAS protein is the one which keeps the RAS protein in inactivated state. Now this RAS protein is attached normally. It's not only is attached to the plasma membrane, but it is also attached to the receptor with one more protein called as bridging protein. So thank God they didn't give any name for that. So it forms a bridge between these two proteins. So they gave the name as bridging protein. So when the growth factor attaches to the growth factor receptor, what happens? There is phosphorylation at this binding site, and the phosphate groups are transferred to guanosin diphosphate. So this guanosin diphosphate becomes guanosin triphosphate, which in turn activates the RAS protein. Now, it is this RAS protein which is present in the cytoplasm which activates the other signal transducing proteins which are present in the cytoplasm. So it is these signal transducing pathways which activate the transcription factor. So there are two common pathways in the cytoplasm: PI, 3K and RAF. These are the two common pathways. If you can remember these two, it's enough. If you can't remember what the other pathways, that's okay. But these two pathways, at least you remember. This in turn, RAF pathway, signal transducing pathway, in turn activates the MAPK pathway. This activates the transcription factor. So similarly for this, PI3K activates AKT, which in turn activates mTOR, which activates the transcription factor. So if you can't remember these names, it's okay, but at least you remember the first signal transducing protein. Okay, so that's sufficient. So MAPK, I've given the full form here. So it's not compulsory that you have to remember the full form, but just for the understanding sake, I've just kept it here. Okay, so you can just mention the activated RAS in turn activates the signal transducing pathways, that is PI3K and RAF. So these pathways activate the transcription factors, that is the MYC protein, which causes cell cycle progression. Okay, so this is the normal thing which I mentioned. And when the cell divides into two daughter cells, what happens is that there's an enzyme called as GTPase enzyme. So this enzyme, it removes the phosphate group, so converting GTP into GDP. So it causes hydrolysis of this GDP. So once it gets transformed to GDP, the RAS automatically it becomes inactivated. Now, what happens when the RAS gene is mutated? So when the RAS gene is mutated, the RAS protein is tightly gets bounded to GTP. So which does not, and the GTP, the bondage is so strong that the GTP is not hydrolyzed by even GTPase enzyme. So what happens? The RAS is in continuous activated state. Why? Because it is now abnormal. Okay, and this abnormal RAS protein is continuously forms a very tight bondage with GTP, which does not get hydrolyzed even with GTPase enzyme. So what happens? There is continuous activation of all this signal transducing pathways, and there is continuous activation of transcription factor, and the cell is always there in the cell cycle. So if you know what is normal, automatically you will know what is abnormal. So there are three types of RAS proteins. So mutation in or RAS genes. So mutation in KRAS, HRAS, and NRAS. So KRAS is commonly seen in colon cancers as well as pancreatic cancers, HRAS bladder tumors, and NRAS in hematopoietic tumors. So you can just remember one for each of these RAS gene. See, the other signal transducing proteins apart from the RAS gene is non-receptor tyrosine kinase protein. So here the proto-oncogene is BCR-ABL gene. So here there is mechanism is translocation. It is commonly seen in chronic myeloid leukemia. So in detail you will learn in WBC chapter under the tumor section. So CML is very important for you. So when we teach CML, that time we will explain you in detail what is the pathogenesis involved. But here you just remember. So this is the oncogene, okay, the muted version of the proto-oncogene. So here is the mechanism involved, and this is the protein which is in continuous activated state in case of chronic myeloid leukemia. Next is beta catenin. So this is the transducing protein which is involved, and the mechanism is point mutation. So these are the two tumors of the liver, hepatoblastoma and hepatocellular carcinoma. So you can just remember one of them. Now you have finished with growth factor receptors, signal transducing protein. So next, coming to nuclear regulatory proteins, so which are involved in DNA replication and cell division. So I told you MYC gene. So you can see there is either overexpression or translocation. So that mechanism you need not specifically remember. You just in generally you remember overexpression or translocation or point mutation. So that's enough. So on here the c-MYC Burkitt's lymphoma. So this is also important. So when you come to WBC chapter, so this also is quite important topic. So this is the oncogene which is involved. Neuroblastoma. So this again comes in the kidney chapter, so which I only will be taking. So here there is overexpression of NMYC gene. Next, small cell carcinoma of lung, overexpression of the LMYC gene. So likewise, you have cell cycle regulatory proteins. So cyclin E, it's overexpressed in mantle cell lymphoma along with breast and esophagus. Cyclin E, overexpressed in breast cancers. And cyclin dependent kinase 4, it is overexpressed in gliomas and sarcomas, that is malignant mesenchymal tumors. So we can just quote one example for each of these. So that's about the proto-oncogenes and the examples and where it is overexpressed or abnormal in which tumors. Next, coming to the tumor suppressor genes. So I told you they cause cell cycle arrest. So where all they are present, they are present on the cell surface, on the inner aspect of the plasma membrane, a part of the cytoskeleton, present in the cytoplasm and nucleus. So we'll see the examples which come under all these categories. So tumor suppressor gene. So I told you cell surface, you have transforming growth factor beta. So where does this transforming growth factor beta comes? Yesterday I have explained in the cell cycle. Somewhere it comes. I kept it. Yeah. You can see in the CYP and KIP pathway, cell cycle inhibitors. So it's a transforming growth factor beta, which senses the DNA damage, and when the cell is under the stress, and it activates a P27. Okay, which in turn activates this complex, and the cell does not, their cell cycle arrest at this phases of the cell cycle. So it's a tumor suppressor gene because it is causing cell cycle arrest. So it is inactivated in case of colon cancer. I told you proto-oncogene, how many, whether both the alleles have to be mutated or only one allele have to be mutated for proto-oncogene.
One allele.
One allele. For tumor suppressor gene,
Both alleles.
both the alleles. So when both the alleles undergo mutation, the protein gets inactivated. Okay, so there is inactivation of this protein transforming growth factor beta, which is seen in colon cancer. So there won't be any cell cycle arrest even when the cell has the damaged DNA, and it continues to multiply with the damaged DNA. Similarly, I think I mentioned about E-cadherin. So somewhere you came across this E-cadherin in the previous classes. So what is this E-cadherin? Anyone? In the previous class, last week, I was explaining about E-cadherin. Somewhere you came across this. What is this? Yes, anyone? I think in the second class. E-cadherin is a protein molecule which adheres the cells. So loss of E-cadherin, there is motility, there is increased motility between the tumor cells. Okay. So it is inactivated in case of GI cancers, breast and ovarian cancers. Next, on the inner aspect of the plasma membrane, you have one tumor suppressor gene called neurofibromin. So it's a member of GTPase protein. So the normal function of this protein is it converts active RAS to inactive RAS. Okay, so when this is inactivated, what happens? Active RAS is not converted to inactive state. So it is in continuous activated state. So continuous activation of other signal transducing pathways. So activation of nuclear transcription factor, and cell is always there in the cell cycle. So it is inactivated in case of neuroblastomas and neurofibromatosis type 1. So these are the different types of this you will get in soft tissue tumors. So we'll be teaching there again, and this you will be getting in kidney chapter. So we'll be again teaching you there. And these are some of the examples you have to remember now only. Okay. Next, cytoskeleton. So we have neurofibromin 2. Its normal function, it stabilizes the cytoskeleton. So this function gets lost when the gene gets mutated. So that is seen in case of schwannomas. So the tumor arising from the Schwann cells, and meningiomas, tumor arising from meninges, and also in neurofibromatosis type 2. So about this condition we will teach you in soft tissue tumors. Okay. Next, now here very important one. So I finished with the cell surface and cytoskeleton. Next, in the cytoplasm proper, there is a tumor suppressor gene called as APC gene. Now listen here carefully. So I told you about E-cadherin. Okay, so this is the molecule which adheres both the adjacent cells. So now you can see this is the receptor. The growth factor is not getting attached to the receptor. So in the yesterday's class, I told you what keeps the cell in the resting phase. One is absence of the growth factor. The second is activation of retinoblastoma protein, which is there in the nucleus. It has an inhibitory control on E2F, which is transcription factor. And the third thing is that, now this is the third thing. Now listen here. There's one protein called as beta-catenin protein in the cytoplasm. It has two functions. One function is that it attaches to the E-cadherin protein, which forms a bridge between the two cells, helping the cells to adhere together. And the other function is that it can get translocated to the nucleus, where it attaches to the transcription factor and causes activation of the transcription factor. So those are the two functions of the beta-catenin. Now in the normal cell, when the growth factor is not attached to the growth factor receptor, what happens? There's one protein called as APC protein. So this protein binds to the beta-catenin, which is not attached to the E-cadherin. Whatever leftover beta-catenin is there, it binds to the beta-catenin and causes degradation of the beta-catenin. Once the beta-catenin is degraded, what happens? There is no activation of transcription factor. So when the growth factor attaches to the growth factor receptor, it goes by the same name. So WNT is a growth factor, it attaches to WNT receptor. So when there is activation of the receptor, it sends signals to the into the cytoplasm, and signals are sent. What happens? The APC protein, it gets detached from the beta-catenin. Now beta-catenin is free and it gets translocated to the nucleus, where it attaches to the transcription factor, leading to the activation of transcription factor and favoring cell growth. Okay. Now, when the APC gene is mutated, there is no APC protein at all in the cytoplasm. When APC protein is absent, so what happens now? There is no inhibitory control over beta-catenin protein. So even in the absence of the growth factor, the whatever beta-catenin is left in the cytoplasm, not binding to E-cadherin, so it gets translocated to the nucleus and activates the transcription factor. Okay, so APC gene, it's a tumor suppressor gene. So seeing the picture only, you have to understand what is happening. So that you will understand only when you know what is the normal picture and what happens if it becomes abnormal. So whatever I told you, it's in my own words. It's a picture description. So that's why in the schools, in your English grammar, they'll give you a picture and they will ask you, there's a question for you, picture description essay. So seeing the picture only, you have to describe what is happening there. So that training is already over. So use that training, that concept, even in all your in your pathology, because pathology you have many pictures and pictures like this, flow charts. So seeing that only, you have to know what is happening there. Okay, is it did you understood this? Yes, it's quite easy. Okay, you listen it again when I give you the link. So that's about this, that APC gene. So when it is APC gene is mutated, the APC protein is absent. So the cell behaves as if it is under the continuous WNT signals, as if the cell is always there in the cell cycle. There won't be any destruction of the beta-catenin, so it gets translocated to the nucleus, It forms a tight bond or complex with the transcription factor, and it activates the MYC gene, the cyclin E, and the other cell cycle proteins. So the cell is always multiplying, always there in the cell cycle multiplying. So this pathogenesis is very, very commonly seen in colon cancer. So when you go to this colon chapter, under tumor section you have colon carcinoma. So the pathogenesis, the same pathogenesis again they'll be explaining there, so it will be easy for you. So the other cancers are stomach, pancreas, and melanoma. Now the hereditary condition which this mutated gene is seen is familial adenomatous polyposis coli. So this again, this hereditary condition you will be coming across in colon chapter. So in this condition there are around 100 polyps in the colon, in the large intestine, and it's a precancerous condition. It's an autosomal dominant inheritance it has. So once it's been diagnosed, the whole of the colon have to be removed, because any one of those 100 polyps can turn into a malignancy. So it's somewhat a precancerous condition. So the other tumor suppressor genes which are present in the cytoplasm are PTEN gene. So the full form is not required. So the normal function is it causes cell cycle arrest by stimulating P27. It belongs to CYP and KIP pathway. And it also activates apoptosis. It prevents cell motility. So all these functions are lost when once it gets inactivated. So it is seen in endometrial cancers, prostate cancers. And next is SMA D2 and D4. Normal function is it inhibits cell proliferation. So it's not seen in case of colon cancers and pancreatic carcinomas. This about the P27, where does it come? I just wanted to show you. Next, coming to the tumor suppressor genes in the nucleus. So we finished with the cell surface, the cyto on the inner membrane of the plasma membrane, that is the RAS, and cytoskeletal, cytoplasm, last coming to the nucleus. So in the nucleus, I've already explained the pathogenesis of this, the retinoblastoma gene yesterday, the significance of this gene, which encodes for the same protein, okay, retinoblastoma protein. So it's a very, very important gene. So that's why you have to remember the number of the chromosomes. So the gene is present on the chromosome number 13. Okay, so normally it's in the activated state in the resting cell in the hypophosphorylated retinoblastoma. So why it is in activated state? Because it has an inhibitory control on E2F, okay, which is a transcription factor. So once it is inactivated, it's in hyperphosphorylated state. It loses its control on E2F transcription factor. So this E2F, it helps in the cell cycle progression. So once this gene is mutated, both the copies undergo mutation. So the RB retinoblastoma gene is either absent or is in the inactivated state. So once it's in there in the inactivated state, so no inhibitory control on E2F. So there is continuous replication of DNA and continuous multiplication of the cell. The cell is always there in cell cycle. So this is seen in case of retinoblastoma, OMA. So that doesn't mean that it's a benign tumor. It's against the law of the nomenclature. It's a malignant tumor arising from retina in the embryonic stage. Okay. Next, you have osteoblastoma. This is a benign tumor only. Osteoblastoma, it's not a malignant tumor, but in this benign tumor also it is mutation of this RP protein is seen. Next, breast, colon, and lung cancers. You have to just remember retinoblastoma. So, retinoblastoma, there's one pathogenesis involved in this tumor. See how I have just explaining the pathogenesis. I just want to give you an introduction. What is retinoblastoma? See how I have defined the tumor. So it's a common tumor of the eye. Okay, retinoblastoma. It's a primary tumor. So the origin of the tumor is in the eye only. It's an intraocular, that is within the eye, malignant tumor of the childhood. See, can you see all how the adjectives have framed? So that's how you have to define a tumor. So incidence is 1 in 20,000 live births. No sex predilection, so it is seen in both males and females. So more commonly before 3 years of age, and it's of two types: hereditary or familiar, which is seen in 40% of the cases, and sporadic, which is seen in 60% of the cases. Once I tell familial, what mutation it is called as? Called a germline mutation. Sporadic is somatic mutation. So we will see what is the pathogenesis involved in both this type of retinoblastoma. So that hypothesis is called as Knudsen hypothesis. The K is silent. I don't know when the K is silent, why they add it. It's called as Knudsen two-hit hypothesis. Now you listen here. So this is a chromosome coming from the father. This is the chromosome of the mother. So the offspring inherits the one of each chromosome from either of the parent. Now, if this chromosome is transferred to the offspring, which has the mutated retinoblastoma gene, and this chromosome is coming from the mother where the retinoblastoma, that copy of that RB gene is normal. Now the offspring is getting one mutated RB gene from the father and another normal allele of the RB gene from the mother. So here is the first hit. Okay, since it is occurring just before fertilization. Now this is the germ cell. Okay, so it is, since it is occurring in the germ cell, it is called as germline mutation. So this is the first hit. Now this cell with one abnormal muted allele gets differentiated into the somatic cells. Now all the somatic in all the somatic cells you can see the muted allele of the RB gene. Now when one of the somatic cells gets differentiated into the retinal cell, okay, in that retinal cell the another allele undergoes mutation. So this is the second hit. So here you can see when both the alleles undergo mutation, the first hit is occurring in the germ cell. The second hit is occurring when the somatic cells have been differentiated into the retinal cell. So the second hit is occurring in the retinal cell. So this undergoes malignant transformation. So this is the cell. So I told you malignancy is there is single clonal expansion. So this retinal cell undergoes malignant transformation. So you can see the first hit before fertilization, so it is germline. The second hit, it occurs when the cell has been, that abnormal cell has been differentiated into the retinal cell. It occurs in the retinal cell, the second hit. So these tumors are familiar because it's getting inherited from the parent. They are bilateral, so both the eyes are involved, okay, in this. Now what is sporadic? The offspring, it is getting the normal alleles of RB protein from both of the parent. okay, the cell has differentiated into the somatic cells. So one of the somatic cell gets differentiated into the retinal cell. So the first hit occurs in the first and second hit, they occur in the retinal cell only. So first parent retinal cell, the first hit occurs when this cell undergoes one complete cell cycle and giving rise to the daughter retinal cell, then the second hit occurs. Okay, there is accumulation of the genetic mutation. So that's what it means, accumulation of the genetic mutation. So in the first cycle, only one allele is mutated. In the second cycle, in the daughter cells, the second allele is getting mutated. Okay. So since it is seen in the somatic cells, it is called as somatic mutation. After fertilization, it is occurring, okay, in the somatic cells. Now such tumors are unilateral. So it is seen, it affects only one eye, and it's not present at the birth, in later childhood, maybe 5-6 years of age. So this hypothesis was formulated by Alfred George Knudsen. He's an American physician and geneticist. So he is the one who found out the pathogenesis involved both in hereditary and sporadic. So in hereditary, one of the parent will have that mutated allele, whereas in sporadic, both the parents are normal. It takes place, it is acquired, the mutation is acquired in the offspring. So hereditary, they are multiple tumors. That means to say, not only there is retinoblastoma, but other tumors which I have mentioned, the osteoblastomas, ovarian cancers, breast cancers if it is female, and male if it's osteoblastoma. And both the eyes are involved, and it's very early onset. So babies are born with the tumor. Okay, and it can lead to blindness also, lifelong blindness the baby will be having. And sporadic, they are single tumors, only retinoblastoma only occurs. Other tumors like osteoblastomas and breast and ovarian cancers, they don't occur, and it involves only single eye, one eye is involved, and late onset, maybe in late childhood, 5-6, below 10 years of age, only 5-6 years of age. So that's about Knudsen hypothesis. So this is the retinoblastoma tumor. You can see the cross section. Yeah, so this is half of the eyeball. Here you can see the cornea, the lens, and here is the retina. You know, retina is there in the posterior chamber, and you can see this gray-white mass. So this is the retinoblastoma tumor. Okay, seen in the posterior chamber of the eye. So P53 gene, the other tumor suppressor gene. So this is also very important. So it's present on the chromosome number 17. So this mechanism I've already explained again. So normally when there is cell stress, when there is damage to the DNA, the P53 binds to the DNA and causes cell cycle arrest by activation of P21. So once the cell cycle stops, it activates GAD45, growth arrest DNA damage gene, so which repairs the damaged DNA. So if this fails, it activates the apoptotic gene, which causes programmed death of that cell with the abnormal DNA. So once the gene gets inactivated, there is no P53 gene at all. So no cell cycle arrest, no activation of DNA repair gene, no activation of apoptotic gene. So the cell goes on multiplying, forming a malignant tumor. So the other tumor suppressor gene, which you just know the names and in which tumor it is seen. So WT1 gene, it is seen in Wilms tumor. You will see, you will come across this tumor in kidney chapter, which I only will be taking. And next, VHL gene. So you have to know the full form of the gene. So this is important because this gene is mainly involved in renal cell carcinoma. Okay. And other is pheochromocytoma, which I only will be taking in kidney chapter. Next, P16 and P14 gene, so INK4, okay, they are cell cycle inhibitors. So ARF family it belongs to. So it is inactivated in case of esophageal cancer, pancreatic and breast cancer. So a little bit about VHL gene I'll be telling, so because it's very important. So pathogenesis of renal cell carcinoma is also important for you. There also again I'll be telling, but here only for your understanding's sake, like how it causes favors cell growth. Now, usually this gene, it has an inhibitory control. It controls the functions of vascular endothelial growth factor, platelet-derived growth factor, and insulin growth factor. So how it controls is that it causes degradation of this hypoxic inducible factor, which activates all this growth factor. So by causing degradation of this factor, it controls the function of all these growth factors. So what happens when the VHL gene undergoes mutation? So this protein is not degraded, instead it accumulates in the cell. So that leads to continuous stimulation of all these three growth factors. Okay. And so the cell, it favors the cell growth, and vascular endothelial growth factor, it favors the angiogenesis required for nourishing the tumor cells. So again, I'll be explaining you in kidney chapter, but this is an important gene. So just remember, don't forget to mention in tumor suppressor gene. See, other tumor suppressor gene only for completion's sake I have kept. So there are around 7 types of tumor suppressor gene mentioned in your textbook. So you can remember 5, whatever I told you in the beginning. This is only for the completion's sake I have kept you. Again, you will be seeing in the textbook 2 are mentioned, and I didn't mention 2. So BRCA1 gene, so breast cancer 1 gene and breast cancer 2 gene. So they are involved in DNA repair by binding to one more gene called as RAD51 gene. So together it repairs the damaged DNA. So it is most commonly seen in hereditary carcinoma breast. So whenever a breast cancer female patient comes, the most important history you have to take is the family history, whether the mother had the history of cancer, and in case if she has own siblings, sisters, whether the sister had any cancer, even cousins also, the first cousins or mother sisters or own sisters or mother grandmother. So that family history you have to take, always you have to take if the patient comes with history of breast cancer. It's very important because you need to rule out these genes. You have to study for, you have to send it for genetic analysis. Okay. And this is also one gene which is mentioned in the textbook. You need not remember, it's only for completion's sake I've kept here. So this gene is inactivated in case of a cancer called as basal cell carcinoma. Okay, that's not so important. So that's about all the genes which I have explained, and the different examples under each of them, and the cancer wherever the gene is involved. So now you will understand this chart which is there in Robin, which is given at the very beginning of molecular basis of cancer. So if the cell has the damaged DNA, immediately it should get repaired. If not, the cell, if it undergoes one complete cell cycle with the damaged DNA, then the damaged DNA will become irreversible, and it goes on accumulating the other mutation in the proto-oncogene, tumor suppressor gene, and apoptotic gene, and all the function gets reversed. So proto-oncogene tumor suppressor leads to uncontrollable cell proliferation or replication. Next, alteration in genes of apoptosis. There is no apoptosis, also decreased apoptosis. So this leads to single clonal expansion of the tumor cells. So these cells gets nourishment from the newly formed capillaries, that is angiogenesis. They escape death from the immunity. They accumulate mutations in subsequent cell cycles, so favoring tumor cell progression. Ultimately there is transformation into the malignancy, and once it reaches a particular size, it's capable of local invasion and metastasis. So now you will understand this full chart reading. So that's about molecular basis of cancer. So this is your second competency. The other three topics are very easy. So there are three more classes which are left, and I'll be teaching these three topics. And about epidemiology and how do we grade and stage of cancer also, somewhere I'll be including under these subheadings. Okay, so that's about today's class. So it's not even 1, so I finished before 1. You can have your lunch. I'll be sending the link